Okay.
All right, Chris here from SEGA Nerds, and today we're joined by Eli from Piko Interactive. How's it going, man?
Good. How you doing, man? Nice to meet
Not
you.
too bad. Not too bad. It's a Sunday afternoon. Football's about to start, but the Cowboys are on a bye week this week, so I have some free time. So it's
Nice.
good for me.
I don't watch football. I watch the original football, soccer, but
That's okay. We won't hold it against you. But
oh, come on.
I'm just kidding. Um, so yeah, I wanted to bring you on and talk about some of the cool things that you guys are doing out there. But before we get into that, can you tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Like I said, my name is Eli, and the founder of Piko Interactive, which is a game developer and publisher for classic consoles. So we still develop or manufacture games and produce games for consoles like NES, Super NES, SEGA Genesis, and Game Boy Advance right now. We probably pick on Game Boy Color in the future, but up to now, it's just up to Game Boy Advance.
Awesome, very cool.
Yeah.
How do you come up with the name Pico Interactive? Because that's an interesting name.
Okay, since I've been, smaller, like since in my teens, I always had a nickname, and it starts. I don't want to say it, but it starts with PI, and I always liked the that because pi as or PI as a math symbol,
Mhm.
3.14, all that. So that's why I was like, oh, it would be cool to have like the P, because that's how you spell in Spanish. I speak Spanish. P company, so the P company, and that's how I came up with. And interactive is just because we make interactive games, I say. So that's how I came up with the name.
Very cool. I'm always interested in talking to kind of developers and publishers of how they've come up with names
Yeah.
of their games and their company. So how do you get into actually involved in making and in developing video games and all that kind of stuff?
When I went to college, I wanted to do game programming as my career. After my first class in Java, I just quit. I was like, nah, I'm not a developer.
I heard
So
Java is a pain in the ass. So
yeah, I mean, it was like 2 weeks into the course, the first course. So I wasn't able to do that. I don't think I'm able to do anything bigger. And I just finished school as a communications major, and then it's just funny that once I graduated, I started doing like a lot of like hobby stuff with Super Nintendo, and then I had the idea of like I like to make a new Super Nintendo game, and then I started working with like homebrewers and researching who was doing games, and that's how we made the first project, which was the Super 4-in-1 multi-card, which was like 4 games in one cartridge for the Super Nintendo, and we had a Kickstarter. I think it was like the first Kickstarter that was with like game cartridges, and then since then it's sort of like took off. You get like 3 or 4 every year, and we got a pretty good funding after that. We were able to uh, sell cartridges or be a provider of cartridges to a company that develops clone consoles. Like the Retron 3, the Retron 5 Hyperkin called.
yeah,
And
I
after
love I love those guys. I'm a big fan of the Retron 5.
yeah, exactly. So after that, we had enough. We got the ball rolling. That's where we started licensing stuff like Super Noah's Ark, and then we started working in with different homebrewers with more homebrew games and smaller titles, and then we started releasing games, and it just got the ball rolling.
Oh, very cool. Um, what are your thoughts on the thing that oh man what are they calling the retro VGS? Are you familiar with what they're
Yeah,
doing over there?
I was familiar. We were approached by them way, 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 way back then. They haven't even bought those shells, the Jaguar
Hmm.
shells, and I thought it was a good. I think it's a good idea. I think there's a market for it, and I think it could be like a large niche console, like not like we're niche,
Yeah.
or like with niche within a niche, but they could be like a big niche,
Mhm.
and sell a good amount. But I think it was premature, the whole project. I mean, I guess, and I've known other stories of other companies that they want to rush the project out, and that's why it sort of fails. So probably, I mean, I've read they want to reorganize and come back. So I mean, if they fix everything and get in good terms with the community again, they could probably bring that back and have us a successful, project.
What do you think would like in your vision? What would like a new like kind of retro console need
Uh,
to be able to be successful? Because it seems like kind of your business model that would be something like pretty beneficial for you guys,
yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah, I'd say, I mean, what I noticed with them is that they started to add on a lot of stuff and try to cover as much ground as they could. And there's a Mexican saying that I'm gonna try to translate that says, uh, the one that tries to cover a lot doesn't really tighten or
Mm.
can't really tighten. It's hard to translate it, but I mean, they just tried to cover like FGPA and then play NES and Atari and all the retro consoles, and that was not their initial, pitch. Their pitch was just a new console to make new games or net and cartridges, and I think they just should stay with
Mhm.
that, and then offer the possibility to developers. You know what? It's gonna be really easy to code for this console, and then you'll be able to port your Super Nintendo game or your Sega Genesis game or your just PC game into it, and you can sell more cartridges, and that's it. I mean, they just gotta tighten it up a little bit and don't try to cover as much ground as they can.
It'll be interesting to see what they do when they come back with their Kickstarter project. I think they're going
Yeah,
to have a prototype at that point to be able to get on a Kickstarter. So we'll see what they do. They say they're going to try to get the cost down, which I think is one of the biggest prohibitive things from a customer
yeah,
standpoint. When you're asking someone to spend $300 on a
yeah.
retro console when they could
Buy
essentially
Xbox
get an
One.
Xbox, exactly, go buy an
Yeah,
Xbox for that same price, it's not going to happen.
yeah.
Um, so if
I,
they could get it to about $100 to $150, I think that
I
would.
think it's possible to be. I mean, just look at the use box. I don't know if you've seen it. Use as or ooze box. I don't know how
Mhm.
you say it. It's just that it's a console, but I think it doesn't run cartridges. It's just a console to develop new games. It has its own language and all, dev kit and all that. And it sells for like $60, and it's right now it's more like for a hobbyist. Wants to make new games, but they could take that road and they just add cartridges instead of being sort of like digital, and that's it. I mean, I'm pretty sure they could have a console under $100 if also they manufacture in China or Asia,
Mhm.
um, that will run cartridges and could has enough power to run larger indie games like they had several the ones that they announced. I mean, it's very possible to be under $100. It's I mean, I don't really know who they talked to that told them all those numbers, but I mean, if they wanted to be under $100, they could have since the beginning.
Yeah,
So yeah.
right on. Um, so that's pretty interesting. But let's get back to kind of stuff that you guys are
Okay.
actually working on. You talked a little bit earlier about some of the games that you've developed and published in
Yeah.
the past. But can you talk about some of like your kind of your favorite game that you've worked on and why
Oh,
it's been your favorite?
it's Dork and Imp, and it's called Dork and Imp. It was originally an unreleased game for the Super Nintendo back in the 90s. It was developed by not a company. It was just three guys, but they were called Norse, and it was the only game that they were doing, and it got canceled because it never got picked up by a publisher. The game was developed with unofficial tools. They didn't have a Super Nintendo dev kit. It was just they made their own tools, and it was unreleased. And then we talked to the owners, and we were able to get a license and copyright and all that. But they lost all the source code. They just had like an
Oh
incomplete
no.
source code, and it took us about a year to work through the game and do a lot of stuff. And it came out very well. Like, I'm very proud of that game. It's it's really hard, like the old times. You know how you get frustrated with them, but it's in some parts it's really fun. Like in some levels, you're like, I'm really having fun with this level. It's pretty good. So that's my game. We haven't really advertised much that game. It's available for sale now, but it's for Super Nintendo, and I call it that's my baby, even though I didn't create it, but it was the one that we put the most work on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the I love that you guys are doing original games, but one of the neatest parts of your business is doing that, is going and finding games that were either unreleased or games that weren't released in our territories, and I think that's a very fascinating thing to do. One of the games that you did on the Genesis was Water Margin, the Tales of Clouds and Winds. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That game we were able to pick up about 8 different titles from pretty, I don't know, well, yeah, I can mention it. Super Fighter Team. I don't know if you guys, I mean, you should.
I'm familiar with them, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they had they sort of, since they've been doing this translating games since a long time ago. I think they started like in 2004 or something like that.
Yeah.
They had a pretty wide library of games they bought out from the Taiwanese and the Hong Kong exclusive Genesis games, and we were able to acquire about 8 titles of those. And Water Margin was the first one that I wanted to work on, and we were able to translate text and fix some bugs, add some changes into the gameplay, and just very briefly, because that game was pretty good as it was, just needed some translation. And that was our first Genesis production.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's pretty neat. It looks almost kind of like a Golden Axe style, like an old school beat 'em up, right?
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. It's just an old school beat 'em up.
Nice. How was it like getting the game like translated and everything, working on the Genesis as opposed to the Super Nintendo?
Well, it honestly, I was lucky enough to find probably like what I call the best ROM hacker for the SEGA Genesis, and that guy is awesome. He's quick. He knows everything. He was able. I was like, oh, we want to translate. Okay, and he just dumped the text, and I just got a guy that it's a translator, and he just translated real quick, and he was able to to put it back in the text, and very quickly. We had no problem at all. Usually, like on Genesis projects with him, he had no problem. He's probably like the best guy to have as a ROM hacker for SEGA Genesis.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's another thing, that we didn't get source codes or anything from the games. It was just ROMs and scans from the games. So we had to ROM hack we have to ROM hack from now on all the other games, and that one was, but it's pretty easy for now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings us to where we are today. And like a couple of days ago, you guys made some pretty big news when you announced that you guys are going to be releasing Duke Nukem 3D on the SEGA Genesis, which some people out there might not know. It was ported and released to the SEGA Genesis, but it was only released in Brazil. So we never got it over here. Can you kind of explain, why Duke Nukem 3D and what it was to, made you want to release that game?
Besides unreleased games and exclusive titles, I always look around for potential reachable companies that have Genesis games under their sleeve, because not only we have, I guess like I said, that we have several sections of the company that publish homebrew games, and then looks for unreleased games and finishes them up and release them, and then translate or bring exclusive titles, and then we also license, or we slowly started to license or buy out the games that came out for the Genesis, even if it's you could say Duke Nukem was exclusive, but even if it was just released in America, to become a content provider for companies like Hyperkin and the Retron 5. Because imagine, you buy a Retron, you're not a collector, and you buy a Retron 5, and then now you gotta go find SEGA Genesis games. So the point was to have do multi-cards or do game cartridges and bundle them with a Retron 5. Imagine, you buy your Retron 3 or your Retron 5, and you come with a cartridge with like 5 games, and you don't really have to go look for more games. So that while I was looking for potential companies to work with, I found that 3D Realms, it was pretty reachable still. they're like here in Dallas. So
Yeah.
I checked their library and I was able to, they had Duke Nukem. And I talked to Scott Miller, that's the president, and he was pretty cool about it. He was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And that's how I thought it was gonna be a good project, have an actual card that is not like $200 because in Brazil 'cause it's so rare that's like $200.
It's
So
crazy.
yeah, so people can now have it in their collection and play it, try it out. I mean, the game has its limitations, but it's cool to have it on your collection or buy a new Duke Nukem game for Sega Genesis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're a big time collector out there and you want to add something like that, I mean, I think that would be an awesome game to have. Um, what was it? So it seems like the process of getting the license to do it was pretty smooth. I would think that there was a lot more involved for it.
No, I mean, cause like we're not buying or getting a license that's unlimited. Like we're not getting the PC version,
Hmm.
the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation. No, we're just getting the Sega Genesis. So since usually when developers they don't they I mean, they don't develop for that console anymore. It's discontinued. They won't mind. It's probably like a marketing for them that their game still is relevant and they don't have to invest now. They get paid for. That's a good deal. So it was pretty smooth. I mean, I just sent an email. He answered, and we just talked. But like, okay, and that's it.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if it got resolved, but a year or two ago, I know there's been some ongoing like legal stuff between 3D
Yeah.
Realms and Gearbox.
Yeah.
Do you know? Did that ever get resolved at all?
I think what was it? A couple of months ago, I read online that they like the Gearbox got to keep everything, and
Mm.
I emailed Scott like, what's gonna happen? And we already printed thousands of or hundreds of instruction manuals and covers
Oh
and all that.
no.
I was like, nah, don't worry. Whatever deal was in place, it will stay in place. Don't worry about it. I was like, oh, great.
Okay, so
So
now that Gearbox looks like they own the rights, but it's not going to impact your
yeah, no,
operation at all.
they probably still will think that's good marketing for them. I mean, it is. I mean, it made the news, some news, and
Mhm.
they just keeps the IP relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very cool. Yeah. I know that probably made you like like
yeah,
wet your pants
it
a little
made me.
bit.
Yeah,
So you talked a little bit about some of the limitations that the Genesis version had.
yeah.
Can you go into some detail and tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, I'm gonna say it as a player because I'm not a technical guy that much. But honestly, it's just the way that the game handles the 3D aspects, the walls, and all that. I could say I could compare it to Wolfenstein for Super Nintendo or Super Noah's Ark, but Super Noah's Ark was released later when the engine was a little bit better. But yeah, it's not really 3D. It's just some sort of like code trickery
Hmm.
to make it look like this, like you're in a 3D world and moving like that. So it just handles different the walls and the corners of the walls and the ceiling and the game. So it looks like it's 3D, but it's not really 3D. I mean, I guess if it wouldn't been released for 32X, would it probably or with special chip like Doom for the Super Nintendo, it will handle different the the levels. But yeah, that's it. And also, I think since the levels have been changed for that game to sort of work with a new engine that for the Sega Genesis, so it doesn't. It could be it work with no lagging or any slowdowns and stuff like that.
Oh, very cool. And I think it had some of the content was cut down from it. Wasn't it, like trimmed a little bit too?
Yeah. Well, Duke Nukem has three not areas, three sections you could say, or three games in one, or three different chapters.
Hmm.
And the Genesis version only includes the second one, the second chapter, Lunar Apocalypse is what it's called.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just one of maybe if I mean, because I know there's a few homebrew developers out there that have been working in a pretty good engine for. Hey, what's up?
That's my son's coming in.
Yeah, they're working up on in a new engine. I've seen the project, the Wolfenstein for Sega Genesis, and it's pretty promising. It's really
Hmm.
good. I've seen it on Sega 16, the forum, and maybe like with that, if we could get permission, we could port the other two chapters, the first chapter and the second chapter. But future plans.
Right. That's that'd be actually be pretty neat. So when the game is released, is it going to be like region free, so people in like Europe on their Mega Drives be able to get it?
Yeah, we worked the cool thing about Sega Genesis, unlike the Super Nintendo, is that you don't need a region uh, chip or a region key chip. It's not like console is not really region locked when it comes on hardware.
Hmm.
So you gotta just work the ROM. Make sure that the ROM is region free, just the software. So up to now, we tested the ROM, and it works on PAL systems and Sega Genesis. I mean, yeah, Genesis, Mega Drive, and Genesis. And then I had a few questions if it worked on the Japanese Mega Drive. I don't really know, but I think it should. It's just that they use different cartridges. It's just the one which has the run stuff around it. So I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
think the only model that'll you can even plug a Japanese Mega Drive cart is like the Genesis 3. I think will actually
Yeah.
accept it, but the first two won't accept
No,
it.
no, no, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, but yeah, it should work on all the Mega Drives and all the different regions, and yeah, and that's hopefully we don't run any problems.
Very cool.
Yeah,
So one of the other neat things you guys do is you offer like two different ways to buy the game. You can buy the cart only
yeah,
for $39, or you can get like a complete in-box for $54.99. So can you tell
yeah.
me a little bit about both the different versions?
Yeah, I mean, you already explained it. It's just the cartridge only and the in-game case and manual, instruction manual. And we do that because I know it's a lot of people that either just want to play the game, they don't care if they comes with a case and manual, or they just collect cartridges. Like, oh man, my collection is just cartridges. Why would I buy a case? And
Hmm.
we don't want to force that extra $10 or stuff like extra money into them. Which I mean, if you want just a cartridge, you can get a cartridge, and it's cheaper for you.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Like typically, what do you see like when you release a new game and you offer those two
Oh,
options?
it's a complete in box most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm a collector too. So there's something to be said when you can see a box sitting on your shelf versus like a little
Card.
cart.
Yeah.
It feels like something's missing, and every time I buy a game, especially a game that I really love, and if I can only get it card only, I'm always a little disappointed.
Yeah.
But I think it's still cool, like you said, though. I mean, if you just want to play the game and have the cart, that option's there for you. Now, there's a lot of other games that were released just in Brazil, like for the Genesis and stuff like that. Are there any other games that are kind of on your guys' radar that you could talk about?
I I was interested in how do you woodpecker game. I don't
Oh,
know how
Woody
do you.
Woodpecker, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I saw that cartoon in Mexico, so I know the Mexican name. But yeah, Woody Woodpecker, and it's a solid game. It probably just needs some retouching on the graphics, and
That's
I
one of
was.
the most expensive. Was it on Genesis or was it a Master System? I can't remember for sure.
I don't know if it came out in Master System. I'm not really, but Genesis. I mean, most of the Brazil exclusives are super expensive.
That
Yeah.
would be an awesome game.
Well, the thing what happened is I have a friend that was able to call a Tectoy because I mean it's being reported out there that we made a deal with Tectoy and we didn't. We would just talk to 3D Realms because they
Mm.
own 3D Duke Nukem. Tectoy was just a license got people like they just licensed the game manufactured for Brazil, so they didn't have it. They don't have any claims or any rights or anything like that. And I had a friend of mine call Tectoy and spoke with the only guy that's left that's been there since the 90s. And he's like, oh well, first of all, we don't we were just a license company. We just licensed and manufacturer. We didn't hold the rights, and that game is abandoned. Like the Woody Picker, like we don't know who owns that, and we don't have any record anymore of the developer. Like, oh, that's a bummer.
Oh man, I wonder how would you even go about at that point? I mean, I would wonder if you'd have to go back to the who owns the rights to Woody Woodpecker today to try to do that. How would you go about that?
Well, no, you got to split that in two. That's the game developer owns the code and the game. You know, the game as it is a
Hmm.
game, and then the IP owner of Woody Woodpecker, it's another party that you have to get permission or license. If, for example, a scenario, let's say we found the developer and he's like, yeah, go ahead, you know, you can release it, just pay me whatever royalties, and then we're good with that. But then we have to go with the owners, which is Warner, the Warner Brothers, I think, the Warner Company, I
Yeah.
think, owns Woody Woodpecker. So we have to get a license, and that's a big no-no. I've tried to
Hmm.
work uh, with the Warner's company before, and it's just no. They don't. I mean, they if they're not gonna make $1 million profit. They're
Yeah.
not gonna even look. So another thing that could be done is that you rebrand the game, change the graphics a little bit, change the character, and then change the music, and now you could release it. But like I said, if the community is like eager enough to have that game released here, I would probably have to research a little bit more, check the credits of the game, and after that, try to find anybody from there and talk to them.
I find that
That's
such an interesting kind of like, I mean, you almost have to do like some detective work to try to
yeah,
go in, and that's pretty neat. I think it's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah.
Um, now, before we, and I noticed one of the neat things on your guys' website, you have a scholarship program called Keep Retro Alive
Yeah,
for college students that are pursuing computer science degrees. Can you tell
yeah.
us a little bit about that?
And yeah, that's a scholarship. It's just for UTSA, the University of Texas in San Antonio, for students that want to pursue a computer science degree, but have or are interested in game development. So if there's some requirements to apply for the scholarship, and if they have some like game developer, they offer like 5 different classes there. If they are enrolled on as a this semester, they apply for the scholarship. They're eligible. So that's yeah, it's just a way to. I mean, I went to that school and it was pretty good, and I got a couple of scholarships from locals. So it was it's just a way to give back.
That's awesome. I think
Yeah,
that's really cool.
yeah.
So I guess where could our viewers go to kind of find some more about what you guys offer?
You can go to picointeractive.com, Piko interactive.com, and then if you're interested in the store, just click store and you'll see the different categories and the different games. I mean, it's a good, I'll take the opportunity to say that we're going to be opening pre-orders for Gene Power SEGA Genesis. I don't know if that we want to leave that for another
Oh no,
interview or.
you can tell us all you want about it
So
if you
yeah,
like.
yeah. So Gene Power. I mean, I don't know if people read the my blog post, but we found the game when we licensed Gene Power. Our initial what do you call it? Like my initial interest for that game is get the license, port the game to NES, and then probably try to release it the Super Nintendo version on the Virtual Console, Nintendo Virtual Console, and then probably like a PC release on Steam. But when we were able to license, the developer sent us all their backup, and I was able to find a full ready to go version for Sega Genesis, like complete.
Oh wow.
So we took on that project too, and we'll be taking pre-orders by the end of the year, probably December, for both Sega Genesis and Nintendo NES.
Very cool. And
So
what was the name of the game again?
Jim Power, the Lost Dimension. Jim,
Okay.
like a gym. It's a pretty known IP in Japan and Europe, and it came out here in the U.S. For Super Nintendo, but it was just canceled for Sega Genesis.
Oh man, that's a bummer. That's
Yeah,
really cool though that you
yeah,
guys are going to be doing that. That's something going to be on our radar. So as
yeah,
it gets closer, maybe we can get you back on the show
yeah, for
and do
sure.
another interview for that. So cool. All right. So yeah, everybody just check out their website and pre-orders are happening now for Duke Nukem, right?
Yeah, honestly, the game's ready. Okay, this is what we do. Every time we get an order, that's when we assemble the PCB and burn the game and solder the chips. So it takes a while to do that, or it could delay the shipping. That's one thing. That's why we say it will ship in 3 weeks, but it could be sooner than that. It's not really a pre-order. Everything's ready. Just that it will allow us some days to package everything and everything. So that's if they order now, it probably ship in 3 weeks. It probably ship sooner. Right now we're just waiting for the new Genesis cases, because the one we released with water margin was pretty flimsy. The plastic and the film to cover, and a lot of collectors were like, "Yeah, we don't really like it." So we went ahead and tried to get a better one, and we did. We were able to find one, and yeah. So the cases are now going to be much better. Higher quality. I'd say it's better quality and harder plastic, and that's one of the main things that they were not complaining, but just pointing out about the water margin release. So now we're gonna have these better cases for the Duke Nuke, and then whoever bought them water margin, whenever they make an order at the store on our website, they're eligible to get a free case, so they could swap it up and have a better case for their water margin.
Very cool. So you guys don't use these old crappy cardboard Genesis cases?
No. I mean, we do. We try to mimic the way the games were released during the 90s, as they are mostly known. Like Super Nintendo, just cardboard board. SEGA Genesis, cases, and stuff like that. So yeah.
That's very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, we will definitely be talking to you again, Eli. Thanks for coming on the show.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Take it easy.